following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Bronx Roots with David Hubler and Michael Preminger. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I am lucky enough to have these two guys on the air every Sunday with me to talk life, basically. We all have the same upbringing, and it's fun to see where it's carried us individually and collectively. I'm getting a big kick. Michael, I thank you off air. Last week you shared some stuff about your experiences in the comedy world and getting on the Tonight Show. Priceless. I've thought about it all week and really had fun. It was fun getting to know you a little bit. And I've been doing the producing, as it were. I want you guys to talk and tell me what's on your mind. We have some very turbulent times going on with these shootings and with these Congress people not responding to our needs to raise our children without being in fear that we send them to school and they don't come home. So let me start with you, David. What hits your mind with that? What is that?
Yeah, well, and Michael certainly can back me up and add to this. When I see these shootings and I see the fact that they've got police on duty in the schools and they have metal detectors in the schools, it always brings to mind the difference between when Michael and I went to high school and today. And we went to a New York City public high school. It was all boys, and it was considered, and for its day, it was considered a fairly, it had rough edges. Let's say.
Right.
There were, there were.
Say the least.
Yeah. Because, you get 4,000 boys together. It's like, San Quentin. And there were some guys in there that, were not particularly nice or good. But there was nothing like what's today. I remember one day there was a rumor that somebody had come to school with a zip gun. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what a zip gun is, a zip gun was made out of the corner of an orange crate. The wooden corners were solid wood. The rest of the crate was just thin slats of wood. So you cut off a corner of the orange crate in the form of an L, and you had a gun. And what you would do is you would take then you would this is where the illegal part comes in. You'd steal somebody's radio antenna off their car. Okay? Not advising anyone to do this. I never did it, but that's how you made the thing. Because you needed a thin tube that would take a 22-round bullet. And you would, with black masking tape or whatever, electric tape, you'd tie that onto the longer part, and then you take a nail and a rubber band, believe it or not, and you tie that on the bottom of the front part, and pull the rubber band back, and you would insert a .22 shell in the rear end of that cut down radio antenna, and you would snap the rubber band with some sort of piece of metal in it or something. That part I've never been too sure of. And boom, the .22 shell would fly out of the other end of the radio antenna. Well, that was a zip gun. And, of course, it was very, very fundamental. It was very, very crude. It had no way. There was no way you could actually aim the thing. But we had.
There was no magazine.
No, there was not. It was one. You had to put in a separate bullet each time.
Right.
Now I never saw one fired. I had seen.
Neither
but
did
do Do you remember that time there was a rumor going around the school that somebody had come to school with a zip gun, and that was probably.
I hadn't even thought of the word zip gun in a long time.
Sure.
That was considered, whoa,
That's right.
In school.
Yeah.
Now, with the craziness that we've seen, I want to ask you guys, with number 18 was the 18th shooting of this year.
Yes.
18 is a special number in the Jewish religion. I don't remember what it is, but happens to be a special number in the Jewish religion.
Now, you guys know that Michael and I were great Hebrew scholars in going for our bar mitzvah. So we can fill you in on this a little bit. Michael, remember?
You'll let me know what 17, 18, and 19 are all about.
I think only 18.
No, David, I don't know.
Oh. See?
It is something with 18. So
yeah, I'll tell you what it is.
Anything to it. It also, the shootings also happen to have taken place, these number 18, in a predominantly Jewish school where my nieces and nephew went.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I read something early on, some backlash somebody came out with, could have this been an anti-Semitic thing? And I don't know if it was this kid especially, but I just venture to say that there aren't many Jews in the NRA. Bernie Sanders not like your friend had this great bit. His name escapes me, about hunting here, boys. We got going to bring out the 20
Steve Landisberg.
Right, Steve Landisberg. Was that his bit or what? That was a great bit. But in general, how much everybody's anti-Semitic in the South, and they have pictures of this guy in a Trump hat, and so there could be a backlash. But I'm so proud that these students are taking it a step further, and they're marching, and there's they're getting meetings with people. One happens to be a dunce. It does it. You can meet with him and go, but notwithstanding, they're laying groundwork, and I understand that there are businesses that are turning off the NRA.
Pulled out this
when you hit them in the pocketbook, you got something.
Let's hope it means something or anything. Because no matter what happens, weeks later it's like old news, sadly. So let's hope that these kids are the ones who lead the rest of us to get
absolutely
done.
And there was a thing in Alameda, California, where kids at a high school that's maybe 12 blocks away from me, Encinal High School, where Willie Starger went, and but notwithstanding, those 50 kids or so got out of class and had a little demonstration on the lawn and made the papers. That's something, and it's got to come from the kids who just have had enough of seeing their fellow students, their friends, gunned down, and they don't want the fear of going to school every day and worrying about stuff like this.
For the first time, David, you have grandchildren, and never thought about these things, but now you're going, gee whiz, like my grandson will be going into kindergarten in the fall. He's in preschool, and what's safe?
You don't want your kid raised. I'm talking for myself. I wouldn't want my child raised in a homeschool. I think that defeats the idea at least half of the experience of education is socialization.
Oh, sure.
No question. Yes.
Yeah. So you get these homeschool kids, and they reach 18, and they're out there on their own, and they're walking around the block backwards.
And, one other thing, I was very much against, and still am, against some of these programs where you can homeschool your kid, but if he wants to play for the school football team or basketball team, he can go and I say, hey, no. I mean, you're either in the school or you're not. You can't have it both ways. And you're not even, and that's where that socialization comes in too. How many kids who've worked hard to make a varsity team in high school, want some kids coming in who they never see at all during the day. They just come in and play. So I don't agree with that position at all. If you're going to homeschool your kids, homeschool them. And don't expect.
I didn't even know that occurred.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know that occurs with charter schools. They'll offer kids that are going to charter schools that don't have sports. They'll offer them the local high school to play if they want to. But I didn't know with homeschools. And, I mean, wouldn't that defeat the whole purpose of what the homeschool mentor wanted his kid, his child to experience? If they're going to socialize with the football players or the basketball players, I mean, didn't they want to avoid that to begin with? Not that that's right, and in today's day and age, you have to go. Is it a trade-off? Will the kid sacrifice a little sociability? But if things don't get better, if you have 18 shootings, and I'm afraid a copycat.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Where you say, well, 18 shooting, 12 people got killed. Let's go for the record.
That's right. That's what I was thinking. Just that. Let's top that number. Let's see. Get into the record book.
A little notoriety.
Yeah.
And there are people that do. The guy who killed Lenin, I just saw this documentary. He did it only because he wanted to be remembered as the guy who killed. He wanted infamy.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't have fame, you got to go for infamy. And is it just a gun issue, or should these cuckoos be identified? These not cuckoos, these sick individuals be identified by society? Should this kid's acting strange? Hey, we had a neighborhood. I was in Queens, but even in the Bronx, when I was at my grandparents' house, if I was out doing something, the neighbor would come over, Grandpa, don't tell Grandpa, that kind of thing. It takes a village, and we'd watch out. The parents would be watching out, where the kid had sometimes more respect for the neighbor's parents, your friend's parents, than you did for your own. And where is that? Is it because we're latchkey? The kids are latchkey? Is one two breadwinners? That could have something to do with it. But just the increase in mental illness scares me.
Yeah, that's true. There's no real one answer to that. I mean, I know Michael's mother worked and my mother's worked. They both worked at the same hospital, as a matter of fact. And
really?
Yeah. One was a cardiac surgeon and the other was a brain surgeon. They used to work together. No, but they did. They worked in the same hospital together. And I don't think it ever. But I think we were older at the time. At least I know I was. I was well into junior high school, which is like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. which they don't do anymore. But I don't think there was a problem with latchkey kids. Besides which, the neighborhoods were different. The children were different. I don't know how. I'll tell you a very sad story. When my younger son, was in high school here. The parents and some organization, this PTA or whatever it was, in the school administration, they decided they wanted a specialized high school for the brightest kids in the county, science and technology. That's what they were pushing. So they chose my son's school to become a specialized science and technology school. And it was Thomas Jefferson High School to begin with, and now it's Thomas Jefferson Science and Technology. But instead of, and here's what I raise this because it's one of these things that I think is interesting from the psychological point of view, what it does to kids, what these changes in their life does. They started to integrate with a 9th grade class, and then they had a 10th grade. So the idea was, after 4 years, the regular high school would now be all science and technology kids, which required a special test, like for Bronx Science or Brooklyn Tech or one of the New York specialized high schools. But to speed the process along, they chose to ignore the kids who were just coming into their senior high school year, including my son, and push them over to the rival high school for that final year.
Oh.
Well, yeah. Now, what they did was they pushed them all over to the other school, where they were not members of teams. They were not members of clubs. They didn't know anybody in the school except themselves. And by October sometime, there were at least 3 suicides of kids.
Whoa.
Yes.
No kid. Wow.
Yeah. And,
wow.
A number of years later, I was sitting at a luncheon with the then superintendent of schools for the county, and I told him this story, and he said, really? He didn't know that this is how this had transpired. We had counselors, grieving counselors, things in the school for days on end. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I say a lot of that could be laid at the doorstep of this plan to just totally disrupt the kids' life.
Sure. Oh, wow.
Last year in school, they're struggling to get out. What am I going to do?
Yes.
To get out.
And that age, everybody is so vulnerable and
right,
terribly
vulnerable, and it was just an awful. And of course, some of the administrators tried to push it. Well, these kids were probably disturbed. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. There was no consideration. I always consider one of the worst examples of education malfeasance that you could possibly come across. Because what they and of course the kids, to a person, as far as I can tell, have never gone back for a reunion. They have no affiliation and no interest in the school that they graduated from.
That's horrible.
Oh, sure, because they were.
Yeah.
You said it. They weren't part of it.
Right.
They're disenfranchised.
Absolutely.
From their own school.
We're outsiders from this. Wow, that's.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
So
and they're not going to get much help from kids, like welcome to our new school either, because, kids are kids.
Right. Well, they tried. They got the school kids who were like the president and to make statements welcoming them, But of course, that was just the window dressing.
Right. It has to be. Kids have their own stuff on their minds, and
they're so cliquish in that age anyway.
Right, and you can't appreciate the situation that other kids are in because you have nothing to look back upon.
Right.
And the kids losing their favorite teachers, and
that's right.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say, really. Yeah.
I know there's nothing you can say. I mean, this, as it turned out, they call it TJS&T, or just as has become a world-class high school, and kids from all over try to get in there. But that's not the point. It was the point of all they had to do was like wait one more year. And they didn't do it. I mean, such a silly decision. No, but the point is that the school years are so traumatic to begin with for a lot of kids, and to pull something like this, and of course, a school shooting is 100 times more traumatic than because it affects every kid who was in the school. If it's personally.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine or think of how these kids will return to school and get through the day, and how it's affected their lives, obviously. How do you go back now?
I know.
Well,
yeah.
Like, okay, class, open your books. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or say somebody out in the hallway drops
a human to have witnessed this and survived. Yeah. I didn't go to Vietnam when I was in the Air Force. I have not a lot, but there are times where it hits me. There's a guilt I feel for not going over there. And believe me, I tried to avoid it as best I could at the time. But still, there are other people that went over there and suffered horrible things happening to them.
Yeah.
And so there's a guilt. How about the guilt the kid feels for not being shot? And another acquaintance or friend was.
Right.
And they have counselors on duty. There are families that pass it on to their kids not to ever accept counseling from anybody. What does a counselor know? Quote, that kind of thing. In society, a lot of people don't accept help.
That's right. It's weakness. It's a sign of weakness.
It's a sign of weakness. Exactly. Pull your own bootstraps up. Son, don't tell what goes on in this house. Whatever. It's none of anybody's business. And what do they know? That's why they became psychologists. They're crazy to begin with. And they can't teach you anything. And that's how it gets passed on. So how about the kids that have that stuff available to them in school and can't partake? One way or the other. So they're going to have even a harder time getting through.
Yeah.
And it's 18 times over, and it's parents, survivors, cousins, friends. It spreads in the community. It's absurd. So to give in so Congress people can get their money from the NRA, they don't at least come down and say, no more magazines. Anybody call the magazine, you're going to prison for 10 years. How about that? Turn them in, you got till the 30th. After that, you have a magazine because it's killing our kids. We're taking over. Forget about what the NRA says. I cleaned that one up. Forget about it. What the NRA says.
This latest proposal.
Be done. Or don't elect these people. We got November coming up. Do not elect anybody who's taking money from these people. They're accessories to murder. I know.
And a lot of these kids will be able to vote in the fall. A lot of these 17 coming into 18 years.
So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Good point. Very good point. We're not having to wait, and they're going to definitely have an influence on people who have had their.
Wish there was more, because a lot of these kids won't be eligible till 2020 at the earliest to vote. But boy,
but it's coming along, and
it is.
We hope so. That's what scares the heck out of me is there's still all these people. Look at all the right-wing people with started that this kid is a real student, he's an actor, and I mean, they ignore, they don't care.
I know.
They just, it's maddening.
What gets me is that they can't imagine losing one of their own children. A congressman can't imagine that happening. A congressman gets shot in the hip and playing softball. And he comes out the next day. The next day, it was weeks because he had to go through being in.
Yeah, it was a lot more serious than they thought at first. He was quite. Yeah.
He'll never play second base for the Cubs.
No.
There's no question about that. Yet he's had to be traumatized by it personally, and he's one of those guys that won't accept the counseling.
That's right.
No, that did. The NRA had nothing to do with it. I'm still going to be supportive of it.
Yeah.
And that guy sprayed the whole field with bullets. It wasn't just that one congressman. He was out to get as many of the because it was a Republican team that was going to play the Democrats the next day. They do this every year. And he went to the field near here in Alexandria, and he started to spray the whole area with bullets. And it didn't mean anything. 2 weeks later, they even played the game. It's like nothing happened. Nothing happens. I posted something. I got so upset with this notion that we should arm the school teachers. It's just a terrible idea.
Yes, that's another thing.
So I posted this thing on Facebook, and I said, with apologies to Jonathan Swift, I have a modest proposal. And my proposal is don't arm the teachers, arm the high school seniors, because they're in their last year. They've got really nothing to do. They got congregate in the halls. It would become a badge of seniority. You work your way up to a senior, and you get a gun.
And not only a gun with a fancy holster that hangs down a little on the side, like Hopalong Cassidy, or maybe you could do it.
I'm talking about rifles. Give them AR-15s, and let them patrol the halls.
But you know what? There are an awful lot of NRA people, to be serious for just 1 second, who believe that if the cops are going to be armed, we should be armed.
I know that. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
In a way, given the police overall mishandling of police firearms in the last 50 years, let's say, there's a case to be made.
Well, look what the one security guard they had at that high school. He stayed outside. He didn't do anything. And now they want the police commissioner or head of the department down there in Broward County to resign. And he says no. No,
it wasn't just the school guard that stayed outside. I think it was they had some people that were called and waited outside. You know what? Real cops.
One of the stupidest things. I did a straight piece for one of the sites I write for, and one of the stupidest things they had was that their security system, their closed circuit security system in the school, is on a 20-minute delay. Now, if if that isn't insanity, I don't know what is. So the cops thought. Well, it means that they thought he was still in the school. He was already out, heading toward McDonald's or wherever he went for his drinks. And because the police were being told he's still in the building. He's still in the building because they were the monitoring office, wherever that was seeing the guy but 20 minutes earlier. How do you build a security system that has a 20-minute delay?
What was the purpose in putting in a 20-minute delay?
I don't know. Yeah. That was one of the questions I asked in the piece I wrote. Why would you do that? What was it to save money? I don't know. It certainly belies the fact that you want to be on the spot right as soon as possible. And if you're looking at something,
it doesn't sound like good police work to me, Barney.
No, not at all.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
So these are the guys you want to give guns to and not give the responsible private citizen who does teach, goes to get instructions how to fire the gun and clean the gun and stuff. There is something to be said for that. I can't argue with that altogether. But so you could at least make a case. You could have a debate, a discussion. What is the discussion for magazines? Tell me that, or these bumper things. How can the NRA put that get that in there? What do they say when they're confronted with that question? I mean, that's maybe rhetorical.
Well, it's a slippery slope answer. If we do it for this, then they're going to want to do that. I think I've mentioned that one of the things I used to do for Voice of America was review books, and I remember an author came in. He had written a book. I read the book. It was about the history of the NRA and how it went from, they say, well, it used to be a hunting and instructional organization, and now and yes, that's exactly what it was until this group of right-wing gun nuts, if you want to call them that, and you could.
Yes, you could.
Actually,
I will.
Yeah,
as a matter
in
of
a
fact.
concerted effort,
gun nut.
These guys targeted the no pun intended, targeted the NRA to take over the administrative and the functioning, and they did. They did it over a course of, I think, 1 or 2 election cycles. They were very clever in what they did, and ever since, that's the main goal of the NRA, is to foster the gun use universally, with no strings attached.
I think
now, when the magazines came into vogue, as it were, and I don't know when that was, but I do know I remember firing a gun in the Air Force at target practice that had a magazine. They wouldn't let you turn it on, but I actually inserted the magazine with the 1 bullet or whatever, 1 bullet at a time, whatever it was. When did it come into vogue in any way for the public? When did a war gun? How could they make that go? How could they not have closed that down right away? I'm asking you guys.
I don't know.
I think the scary thing is I read, and I forget now the number of killings in the United States, be it with these new weapons or just the regular gun, is so astounding. Or 1 every 2 days somebody is killed, something like 1 every 20 minutes somebody is shot in America.
Yeah.
And there's some guy listening to this that would
in the
love
world.
to retort with the argument, do you know how many people get killed in automobiles?
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. And that is the stupidest argument I have ever heard. Because when a gun has another purpose besides being a gun, you let me know. But when a car, it takes you to buy groceries, for instance. So anybody out there who's even thinking about that, please think that through. Please write that down and remind yourself tomorrow when you forget that it's not the same. Yes, a lot of people die both ways. But to complicate it, there's some Kennedys out there. But notwithstanding, a little humor about Ted, notwithstanding that's not a good argument.
Cars are universally registered. Everybody has to register a vehicle.
And you have to learn how to drive the
right, and you have to pass a test. Right.
And if you don't
it's a fallacious argument.
They take the license away from you.
That's right.
That's another thing. You don't have, Right.
Well, now they have for drunk drivers. They have those systems that you can't even start the car until you breathe into it if you've been convicted.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So there are a number of restrictions on vehicles. But
and if they could work on something like that, can't they work on getting rid of not all my, people need to hunt. And really could, like I said before, to have a handgun in your house, sometimes if you have that philosophy, if you're for whatever, but you don't need a killer gun. You don't need a war weapon for any reason to go hunting.
Well,
self-defense.
And of course, Florida is one of the worst states because they've got that your right to what is it? What do they call it? Where you can shoot somebody because you thought he was going to attack you.
Yes, that's right.
Oh yeah, that was a case, right?
And they've had an increase in gun violence in Florida because of that.
Oh, I didn't know. See, I
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. From when we were growing up, when the word zip gun meant a JD. Do you remember the
juvenile delinquent? Sure.
Yeah, right. They called you a J. What do you want to be? A JD? A hoodlum? You want to grow up and be a hoodlum?
Right.
It's so out of sorts. You had one kid in 400. One kid all the kids I knew, I could only identify one as a juvenile delinquent. Of all the kids I knew growing up in the 50s, and now it's to the point. Asian gangs, that's another thing. Gangs and Asian gangs surprising me because of culture. I mean, there's no more culture in the world. That's in quotes. It's just a mind-boggling world as I babble on.
And then there's sports, and you read what's been going on. You figure, sports is what am I trying to say? Something you can get away from all the horrible things, and then you open up the paper, and this school has been indicted, and that school, and this kid, and that kid for
there's
taking
a
money.
basketball thing going on now that's so incredible. We're going to talk about it Tuesday night, David, with Hal Bach. And George Case, is it not nuts? There was a wiretap going on. They caught a coach offering a player $100,000 to come to his
$100,000. Whoa!
Yeah, it was in the papers today. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
100. That's he didn't coach.
Chump
He played a game last night and he didn't coach. This is Arizona or
Miller, right?
Yes.
Oh, is it about a kid to come to Arizona?
Yeah,
is that it?
Think, yeah. I think it's Arizona. But it's
can you imagine what big
does that include lunch
that we don't know about when we're talking about giving kids a stipend they can't give to play to keep and this kid gets an offer of that, which, as George said, it's the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly, I'm sure. Yeah, even Lonzo Ball, forget about his moronic father, said, hey, everybody knows everybody gets something.
Yeah.
He said it the other day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So. And they expect it. A lot of these kids expect it.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
I know, and $100,000 is chump change on these programs. So you've got coaches, college coaches making $4 million a year or more.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got these very wealthy boosters. These are grads who have made a lot of money, and under the table they're bringing in these kids.
Yep.
Yep. There's the story about when Kareem was at UCLA, and they gave him a part-time job, and turning on and off the water sprinklers. That's all he had to do. And then when he went to work for the first time, the water sprinklers, he found out, were automatic. So,
oh, is that right? Oh, that's hysterical.
That was his job at UCLA, to somehow supervise the automatic water sprinklers.
But, all said and done, UCLA ran a pretty clean program there with all their winning years.
Yeah.
And yet there's a friend of mine, and I think we've talked about this, a friend of mine who went to Indiana, and all these years later, it's like he still will bring up the fact that, well, there was a guy named Sam Gilbert who was a booster who was given a lot of money and jobs and stuff that's how they got Alcindor and a lot of other people, other players to come there, so that it wasn't, I'm just saying,
he was
it wasn't as clean as it supposedly we thought it was. I don't know, but that's, there was this guy.
Yeah, in so many cases, they were playing on the sympathies of these many rural black poor kids.
Oh, sure.
And you wave some decent money in front of them, and they had, there was little incentive not to take it. This was money that probably was 10 years' salary in some cases for their parents.
Still now, why do so many of these kids, one and done? They didn't go to school their freshman year to go to class. That's a joke.
Right.
Why they?
We've talked about that. Remember, you were at NYU, so you remember when teams were built. You had a center, maybe you had a senior, two seniors, and two guys coming in, and you build teams from year to year. There's none of that. You could write a story like this team's going to be great next year when a freshman comes in and this, that. No, it's not a team, and basketball has become, pros too, of course, individual. There's no more Bill Bradley kind of basketball that teamwork where teams win on teamwork.
Don't forget, in those days, Ralph, and we've mentioned that when we talked about that with Hal Bach, freshmen were ineligible for varsity teams in those years.
Right.
They had to play freshman ball for a whole year.
Right.
And I wonder how many of these kids would stick it out if they had to play freshman ball with no real publicity, no real crowds, although they usually play before the varsity, so the crowd might be fairly substantial. But they don't do it. In fact, it's funny, when we were talking today about baseball players, the difference between college baseball players and I don't think there's been a college baseball player who played his 1 year, freshman year of baseball, and then opted for the MLB, for the major leagues. You can't do it.
That's because the draft the major league draft. Once once you sign, you can't sign in college.
That's right, and you can't play for college.
How many years do you have to play in college? I didn't know this.
For what?
If you decide to go to college.
Well, a lot of these are one and done. Yeah, they play 1 year and then they.
I think in college, basically I think 3 years before the draft year.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what the draft rules are, but and that's subject to court cases too, because you get poor kids that say, "Hey, I need to go pro. I'm not smart enough to go to college, or I don't want to play the hypocritical thing." Kids go to college today, these one and out guys, they don't see one classroom.
Well, I don't think that's as a big a deal in baseball because a lot of these, and there have been several examples recently that I've read about where these guys, they're drafted their first time around and they say, no, I'm going to go to school. And they go to college for a couple of years and then they put themselves into the draft. So there are those examples, but of course, it's not the same thing. You're not drafting somebody to join the NBA the next season.
Oh, right, that's right. You're going to that's right.
The low minors, yeah. You start out, Sheboygan or someplace like that.
And sometimes the teams build into a contract that we'll send you to college, even though you're signing as a pro. We're going to give you college money built into the contract. So that if you don't make it as a pro, even if you do, you get to go back to college.
Yeah.
So, it's absolutely different. But I'm curious to see if someday one of these scandals, and if George Case is right, if it's the tip of the iceberg, that one of these scandals is just going to blow the whole lid off of college basketball and college football too. I mean, the amateur thing, student athlete, that's almost an oxymoron nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember there was an all-star game of bright players, of some kind of bowl game for the bright players, for the exception, back in the 50s.
No.
I'll have to research that, but
did you say bright or white?
Not just bright, but award, student athletes that are great.
Oh. I don't remember.
I don't know.
Another thing they have today that they'll have a starting lineup of football or basketball, and they'll say, he's in his 6th year of college eligibility.
Yes,
what kind of 6th year? The guy's 32 years old, and he's trying to... I mean, once your class graduated, that was it. You were no longer eligible to play varsity sports. No matter how many years they redshirted you or whatever they did to hold you back. So
you read about these guys who switch schools.
Yes.
So they're still eligible for a 5th year for whatever reason.
Yeah. And there was one guy, it brought me up short. He was in graduate school and he still had eligibility left to play.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
They used to when you switch colleges, they held you back
a year,
right?
A year. That's right.
Back in those days.
And I'm not sure if they're doing that now. I don't know.
Well, if it'll make you guys any happier, they're recruiting in high school ball now.
Oh, even earlier. There's some kid there now I saw a picture of him. It was horrible to look at. This kid is 7'7", 7'7".
Oh my God.
15 years old. And and he's playing for this high school, one of these private prep schools, where they bring the kids in just to get them to play basketball.
Right.
And he weighs like.
Were you exaggerating when you said 7'7"?
No, I'm not. I saw the picture in the paper, and
wow.
And he's like 125 pounds. I mean, he looks like. No, seriously, he looks like a cartoon because part of the problem is because he's standing there with a couple of other players, and of course he towers over them. But in the photo, his head is the same size as the normal size kids. So it's bizarre. I mean, he doesn't have a head that matches a 7'7" player.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, he looks freaky.
That's freaky.
I must ask, does he have skills at all?
It's hard. They say yes. They say he's going to be great, But I remember in the early years in the NBA when they first started to go in for tall. George Mikan was considered the tallest, And then they had a guy whose name was Swede Holbrook, and I think he played for the Syracuse Gnats, and he was about 7'1". He could barely move. He couldn't do anything. He could block shots. That was it, because they were still using the set shot in those days. But he was terrible. He was so uncoordinated. He could barely get up and down the court. So I don't know.
And then
about
you went from that to Ralph Sampson.
Yeah.
Played like a guard. He shot. And,
well, now look at the guy on the Knicks. He's hurt now. But what's Preminger?
Preminger, yeah.
Who hits threes. I mean, when he's 7'2", 7'3", and he's like a guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
a guy that
moves,
size can hit from the outside.
Today.
Well, and the thing too, the thing.
Wasn't there a guy from Seton Hall who was, I don't know what, who was like there was Ray Felix, but there was another, I think, who was like
Walter
7.
Dukes. I remember
Walter Dukes.
Oh, maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
I think you might be right, Ralph. I think Walter Dukes, because Ralph, what's his name? Mike, who did you just mention?
Ray Felix.
Ray Felix, and just before, there was another. You mentioned two guys, Ray Felix and because one of them went to LIU.
Oh, to LIU. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Walter Duke. No, I don't.
I'll tell you a
anyway.
Walter Duke story. I went to camp. One of my
Walter
counselors
Degman,
was one of my counselors was a guy that played in the NBA, Barney Cable, and he played with Walter Dukes. And Barney Cable told the story of Walter Dukes sprained his pinky finger. So the trainer told him, trainer was working on somebody else, he says, just tape it to the next finger. And Walter Dukes tapes his pinky finger to his thumb. I'll never forget that. And I also, for one reason or another, found out either later or before, he was an attorney. He became an attorney.
Yeah, 6'11". He played for Seton Hall.
Right.
Ah, okay, I was right. Yay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. And I don't think he had too much of it. Well, he did have a pro career, but it wasn't an outstanding one.
No, Walter Dukes was not outstanding at all. Walter Dukes.
See, and you look at his stats in college, and it's 3 years because he could not play as a freshman.
Yes.
Right. No, in those years you played.
Right. Sophomore, junior, senior. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
Where did you get those? Where did you're just looking on your computer. Can you tell me where you look?
I just Googled Walter Dukes.
Oh, you just Googled, okay.
I'm not that tech savvy that I could find. But yeah, but there's also one that I didn't open, but it was Walter, whatchamacallit, that he, as an attorney. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
He's probably still practicing law, and if he hurts himself, he tapes his finger to his thumb.
Yeah.
Those two things, him being an attorney, you could understand that if with a lot of people, but he passed the bar, and
he passed away too.
Oh, did he really?
2001. Yeah, he was 70.
Whoa,
that's much too young.
Yep.
Much too young.
Much.
Let me tell you. Hey, thanks, guys. This is fun talking.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
David, what does number 18 mean?
Oh, yes. Okay. If you divide 18 in half, you get 9. Oh, no. Yeah. And the ninth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Chai. And Chai is the sign for health. So a lot of people will wear a Chai around their neck as a sort of symbol for, So if you double it,
I wear
double
a Chai, and I thought it was life. Didn't know.
Yeah, life. Yeah, it's all the same thing. Yeah, but
if you double it,
it's double the good luck or whatever it is. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's what.
Oh, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And all those out there learning Yiddish is a good thing. Learning about Jewish culture will serve you well.
next week we'll discuss the Mishnah, and then we'll go on to the Proverbs.
Oh, okay.
From a Bronx perspective,
I certainly hope my phone is working. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. It's Bronx Roots, David Hubler, Michael Preminger, not Pomerantz. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. It's fun, guys. I enjoy your company. Thank you.
Yeah, we enjoy you too.
All right. Be well. Sei gesund.
Sei gesund.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.